I think on this planet, Carly, we are called on to do various things. As Maslow told us, we are called on to survive, and then we're called on to go beyond survival to thriving. And one thing, in my opinion, that we will never be happy unless we're doing is expressing our creative genius.
Listening to the Made for More podcast, where I tell you everything you need to know to build your online empire. I cover mindset, marketing, and how to build massive momentum. And I promise you, I don't leave anything on the table. You know that you are made for more, and that's exactly why you're here. So let's stop playing small and start playing bigger. This is the Made for More podcast. Let's do this. Okay, just imagine this for a second. Imagine that you got to hang out with loads of other women who were exactly like you. Like, they were ambitious, they supported you, they cheered you on, they had your back, and every single time you spoke to them, you felt more powerful and even more inspired to go after your dreams. And imagine if every single week you got to get on a live coaching call with other coaches and other incredible people just like you to keep growing your skills. And imagine if all of those goals that you set yourself at the beginning of the week, you were held accountable to. So at the end of the month, people would come up to you and say, how are you getting on with that goal? Are you staying on track? And making sure that you don't fall off the wagon. Oh, and can you even imagine if twice a month you got updates on all the top trending reels to completely skyrocket your success on social media? Like all the tips and tricks that all the pros use, directly from the Girls Building Empires content creator. Imagine if you found a place like that where there was a roadmap where you could literally come in, follow a roadmap to 6 figures and just completely let go of all the noise out there and follow a proven system for success. Can you imagine how cool would that be? And imagine if you could get all of that for less than $50 a month. I mean, that's nuts. I literally so wish I had this when I was starting out in my business, and this is exactly why I created the Startup to Six-Figure Sisterhood. I promise this is literally everything you've been dreaming for, because this was honestly everything I have been dreaming for my entire life in business. I know you're going to love the Startup to Six-Figure Sisterhood. It's the most incredible membership of people just like you, and I made it just for you to make sure that you stay on track with your goals and you can build your ultimate dream empire. Just head over to girlsbuildingempires.com/sisterhood and you'll be able to find all the details. You are welcome. See you there.
Hello, my friend. I hope you're good. Oh, I am so excited to bring you this episode today. I've just recorded it, which is why I sound so like gooey and happy and like, oh, it was such a beautiful conversation. So in this episode, I had the privilege of speaking to the incredible Gay Hendricks. And Gay is the author of a book which changed my life. I remember when I first read this book, and it was actually weird talking to him today because I listened to the audiobook over and over and over again. So to hear his voice today was so strange. But the book is called The Big Leap. And it was such a powerful insight for me when I realized how I was sabotaging my own success, and I was really putting a cap on how much joy and happiness and success I could experience at one time. And it's an amazing message. I was so grateful to have the time to sit down with him today, but even more so, I was so grateful that the time I got to spend with him was even better than reading the book. Like, just listening to him, and especially if you watch this video, I'm going to put it on YouTube, you can see the way that his body moves when he's talking about it. And he truly lives for this message of just understanding that we can all experience huge levels of happiness and success and joy and fulfillment. And that is what we should be striving for. Like, that is the level that we should be striving for in our own personal development. And we just shouldn't stop until we feel those kind of feelings of elation. And so I'm so excited to bring this to you, especially if anyone has not read the book. the big leap or has not quite understood yet the concept of self-sabotage and the upper limit problem and how you can be holding yourself back, I'm so excited to bring you this episode because I know that this is going to be a huge breakthrough for you. So if you love this episode, which I know that you will, take a screenshot, add it on your, tag me on Instagram at Carly Meyers Life and at Girls Building Empires, and let me know what you're loving. And I'm just so excited to share it with you. What an honor to be able to spend my time with these incredible people. Thank you so much. I can't wait for you to hear it, and I'll see you next week. Bye. Hi, Gay. Thank you so much for joining me. I'm so excited to have you here. How are you?
I'm wonderful today. We've got a sunny day. We've been kind of in the fog out here in California, but now we're in the sunshine. And I'm not even going to ask how the weather is where you are, Carly.
I know. I was just about to say, you're really showing off there, actually, because we do not have that. We don't have that weather. Actually, though, we have had a record-breaking warm day today for October, which means that I'm not wearing 2 jumpers. I'm only wearing 1 jumper. That is record-breaking warm. So I think you're in the right place, to be fair. I would stay where you are.
Well, picture me playing golf this afternoon in a short sleeve shirt. That's all you need to know about my weather this afternoon.
Oh, you're rubbing it in. You're rubbing it in. That's cruel. Well, I'm so grateful that you're here. I'm grateful that you've taken some time out of the sunshine to come and speak to us today, because I was just telling you before, but your book, The Big Leap, honestly changed so much for me. I remember where I was when I read it. I remember when I first had that realization of, I do this. Oh my goodness, this book was literally written for me. And it was such a transformational book for me. So I feel so honored to have you here, just so I can personally say thank you to you, because it really did make a big impact. But I'm so excited to also bring this message to my audience as well, because I know it's going to impact a lot of people. So,
thank you very much. Well, I appreciate you getting the ideas out. To me, these are some of the most sacred things I've ever learned as far as things that I really want to pass on. And so I'm always delighted to be able to talk about this subject with a new audience.
Oh, thank you. So for anyone who doesn't know who you are, maybe they haven't read The Big Leap, they're not sure about your background, you have so many qualifications under your belt. You've got such an incredible background. So tell us a little bit more about you.
Well, professionally, I was trained as a psychologist. I got my doctorate at Stanford in 1974, so almost 50 years ago now. And I was a university professor for many years and teaching in the field of counseling psychology, taught graduate students for 20 years in counseling psychology at the University of Colorado. And then my wife and I, Katie, known professionally as Kathleen Hendricks on our books, but her name around the house here among friends is Katie. Katie and I are just about to start our 43rd year together. And so when I got together with Katie in 1980, she's also a psychologist, and we began working together. And so during the 1980s, we did a lot of work with couples and coming up with a new way for couples to solve problems and get into harmony with each other. And toward the end of the 1980s, we sat down and wrote our book, Conscious Loving, and which described our new method of relationship work. And right away, we got on Oprah with it, and it became a big, huge bestseller. And all the time, I had The Big Leap in the back of my mind, because like I say, I thought about The Big Leap for 30 years before I sat down and wrote it. So we got off onto this kind of express lane called relationship seminars, and we went around the world, 2.2 million frequent flyer miles, teaching our relationship work, and 500 different radio and television shows and that kind of thing. So we were busy during the 1990s doing a lot of relationship work, and with Conscious Loving and other books that we wrote after that. So around the turn of the last century, all the while I had been working on what we now around here call our genius work, which is the work that's in the upper limit, and the sequel to it called the Genius Zone. And so I had been thinking about that and working with executives and things like that on the ideas in The Big Leap. And so then I sat down and worked on that, and that came out this century. Now I do 2 things. I do a lot of relationship work, and I do a lot of Big Leap works. So that's what I've been up to for the past 40 or 50 years. I grew up near Orlando, Florida, where Disney World is now. And at the time, Disney World wasn't there. It was 30,000 acres of swampland. But
Wow.
we were all amazed. We said, Disney's going to build a place out there in the swamp. But kudos to them. The place is unrecognizable now. It's fantastic.
Oh, that's so good. I love that you've had these two core messages that you've kind of built your whole career around. Like, it goes to show how much you truly believe in this message and how much you want to get it out there. So for anyone listening now, you speak about the upper limit. For some people, they may think of that almost like self-sabotage. That's probably a term that they would be more used to. But the upper limit is really, you describe it, it's almost kind of putting a cap on how happy you can be. Isn't that right? So I'd love to hear you describe the upper limit more and what that looks like.
Yes, well, there are a couple of elements of the upper limit problem. One is many of us live under a ceiling that's too low for us, and that ceiling is made of our limiting beliefs about what's possible. A lot of us go around thinking, I don't deserve love, or I don't deserve the good things of life, or, there are a number of limiting beliefs that human beings can implant on themselves and take them for real, but they're not real. There's nobody out there that says you can't have whatever you want. And so to me, the upper limit problem is about those limiting beliefs. And then what happens is when we start being more successful, the other part of the upper limit problem kicks in, which is that tendency to sabotage ourselves and to bring ourselves back down. I don't so much think of it as sabotage. I think of it more in terms of we get into a place of the unknown that we haven't been in before, and then we get scared, and then those old limiting beliefs pull us back in again. And so I started working on that. I first noticed it with executives. I was working with a lot of executives in high-tech firms, and these people were so brilliant intellectually. But what would happen is they would have a big breakthrough at work and then go home that night and get into a huge argument with their partner. Mm-hmm. And that happens so often, I begin thinking, is it somehow that they're allergic to feeling more positive energy? Are they allergic to more success? And that really was what started cueing me in on the upper limit problem.
Oh, God, it's so true. And I've seen that play out in my own life so many times. I remember there was a time when I'd just done a bodybuilding competition and I came second in my first bodybuilding competition. You wouldn't know that now. And then that same weekend, I was speaking on stage at this massive training conference and everyone was cheering. And then I went home and literally started a blazing row with my partner. Wow. And it was such a high. And I can completely relate to that feeling of like, it's almost uncomfortable that things are going so well that you're like, I just need to feel a little bit of comfort in at least one part of my life not going well. Yeah. It's crazy that we do it though.
Well, yeah, but almost everybody's done it. And like the first time I actually did it, long before I even had a name for it, I was overweight and I had gone on a diet and started eating, not really a diet so much as eating the kind of foods that normal people eat instead of triple cheeseburger, plate of French fries, vanilla milkshake, all those kinds of things. By the way, I'm now a bodybuilder myself. I started training when I was in my 60s, and now I'm 77. I'm the top guy in the gym right now.
Good work. No upper limit for you.
Even some of those young sprout 70-year-old guys. It's been a real life changer for me. But I lost 35 pounds the first month, pretty much a pound a day. And simply by eating things like fruits and vegetables and things like that I hadn't eaten before. And so the weight just kind of fell off me. I was feeling so good. And I was walking down the street and I looked in a window of an ice cream shop. And there was a family of 4 in there devouring a huge, gigantic ice cream sundae with 3 different kinds of ice cream and everything. It was just this giant mess. And I just had to have one, though. It was like I went into a trance and forgot how good I was feeling. And I went in there and I bought one of those all for myself. And I just, chomp, 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 slurp. And for about 20 minutes, I felt high as a kite from all that sugar pumping through me. But then I got the biggest stomach ache I'd ever had in my life. I actually doubled over on the street and people were saying, "Are you okay, sir?" And I should have said, "No, I'm definitely not okay." But I didn't know what had happened there at the time. But when I look back on it, I realized, oh, I don't have a way of letting myself feel good for long periods of time without sabotaging myself. So that really, you don't need too many lessons from the universe like that. I call it blunt force karma, where you've been putting off learning something for a long time and then whoosh.
So do you think it's like, does it come down to a lack of self-worth? Is it where like, I'm not worthy of like feeling happy and having all of my life going well? Is that what it comes down to? Or what's the deep-rooted cause of it?
Yes. The deep-rooted cause of it are these limiting beliefs like, I don't deserve love because of something bad I did, or I don't deserve the good things of life because I'm the wrong gender or the wrong color or the wrong place. I live in the wrong place, or whatever your disqualifying thing is that you think disqualifies you. Those limiting beliefs get hold of us at a very early age. And actually in the Big Leap, I described there's only about 4 big fears, maybe 5, that have the real grip on us. So what happens is we start improving, we start doing better, we start losing weight, we start making more money, and then it dials up one of these 4 beliefs. And when you listen to them, you'll see, well, gosh, everybody's got at least one of those. The biggest one probably is the one I've already touched on about, I'm fundamentally flawed in some way. I don't deserve love, or I don't deserve abundance. So I'm afraid I'm fundamentally flawed in some way. And those limiting beliefs like that, they're just made of condensed old beliefs. They don't have any reality to them, because in truth, there's nobody on earth that is fundamentally flawed. I mean, we all have quirks and learning issues and things like that, but we don't need to think of them as flaws, because for every person you could say, well, I can't be successful because I'm fat, or I can't be successful because I'm the wrong skin color. You can think of 58 dozen people that are become very successful even though they're fat. So the big one is, I'm fundamentally flawed in some way, that old belief. The second one is equally got a grip on a lot of us, particularly in our field, Carly, because it's about, I don't feel like I have the right to really shine to my full glory. That a lot of us feel that we have to keep ourselves tucked in for fear that other people won't shine, that we want other people to go through the door first. And we've been taught to be second and that kind of thing. And that's a lovely thing, but it's also a limiting thing. And that doesn't mean you have to go out and bash your way through every door in front of everybody else. It just means that you need to shine your light to the fullness of what you can do. Like one of my long ago mentors, Abraham Maslow, said, it doesn't matter if you're making a genius soup or writing a genius symphony. It's got the same mechanisms engaged. And that's the other half of our work here is working, in addition to upper limit problems, we work on helping people move beyond their upper limits so they can really get their genius on the line.
It's so interesting. And then what are the other 4 fears? I think I remembered you said it before. Is fear of success is one. That was like, I think when you said that before, I was like, wow.
Wow. Yeah. Well, one of the others is it relates to this fear of success, because a lot of people have a fear of being disloyal. If they grow, they're afraid they're being disloyal to people around them by changing their beliefs. That is such
a big one.
Ooh, it is. Ooh. I noticed you squirming in your seat when you started talking about that. So a lot of us feel that And I frankly had to go through this myself a lot because I grew up in a very conservative family. I'm kind of the radical, progressive kind of person, that every conservative family probably has one of them that's, wildly liberal and all that kind of thing. And so I was the one that drove everybody nuts when I was growing up. But when I first started writing books, for example, I remember the first thing my mother said, she's a Southerner to the core when she was alive. When I told her, I showed her my first book that I was working on and what it was, which is a book of relaxation and focusing exercises for children so that they can be more relaxed before they take tests. I wrote it when I was in graduate school and my daughter was in first grade, and I would volunteer in the classroom, and it used to blow me away how much of the teacher's time was just spent kind of getting everybody organized and focused and centered. And so I wrote this little book called The Centering Book, and it was a surprise little bestseller in the education field. So it kind of got me launched, actually. But anyway, when I tried to show it to my mother immediately says, people don't read those kind of books down here. And to the best of my knowledge, I've written 50 books, and I very seriously doubt if my mother's read past the first page of any of them, even if she has opened them. Yeah. And so, that old saying, don't go to a fruit stand and ask for Birkenstock sandals. So I don't go for my self-esteem to my Southern conservative family, fortunately. But be prepared if you do anything out of the ordinary or extraordinary. Be prepared for some people to have a tug on you. Even real, like, golly, I work with a lot of high-powered female executives because I, like you, teach courses on entrepreneurship and work with a lot of all sorts of different people. But anyway, one of the things that I cannot believe is I have a client who's a very powerful C-suite executive in a utilities company. But when she gets home at night, her husband gives her a hard time, like for going out to her woman's group on Thursday night. And, those kinds of little irritating things that are just, barbs about growth or little things that are designed to kind of make you feel bad about what you're doing. And so I see that all the time. And I don't want people to be shackled to their loyalty. You have to just be straight with people and say, look, this is what my life is. This is what I'm doing, and I'm going to do it. And so I appreciate your feedback, your criticism and all that kind of stuff, but I really am going to do what I want to do. And so we need to be that open and honest with the world. But it's a hard time sometimes if you're in relationships where some of your freedoms are limited and where you don't feel like you can fully be yourself.
I love that saying, don't be shackled to your loyalties, because sometimes you're being loyal to people that don't always show the same loyalty back, don't you? And it's like, obviously loyalty is important, but only in the right spaces.
Yes, I've seen that so often that, that's one of the reasons I wrote The Big Leap, is I want people to know how to unshackle themselves while still maintaining the flow of love and connection with people in your life. That's important too, but you cannot allow yourself to blunt your genius in the service of old limiting beliefs and the people that hold those limiting beliefs.
Yeah, totally. So I remember when I first understood the concept of upper limit, and I realized my own traits and behaviors, and I was thinking, oh my goodness, I'm doing that. Like the other day, I had an amazing day in London, and I was so happy. And when I was driving home, I imagined getting into a car accident, because I was like, it felt uncomfortable that I was so happy. And the reason I say that is that I want these examples to trigger it for some people to think, oh God, I do that. But for anyone listening to this, if they are hearing things, examples that myself and yourself are saying, and thinking, oh my goodness, I do that, what would your advice be for them to actually start changing it?
Well, that very thing that you've mentioned is a key, because just noticing it, most worry thoughts are upper limit problems, and you can check them out immediately by asking yourself this: is this thing I'm worrying about something I have any control over? And as soon as you realize that you don't have any control over it, that's an upper limit worry thought. So the first thing that's going to happen if you start feeling, oh boy, I feel more alive. Uh-oh, I'm going to be in a car accident. Just because of the lack of familiarity with letting yourself feel good for lengths of time. And yes, so by my estimate, 99% of worry thoughts are about stuff that you actually don't need to worry about. Now, if you're approaching an intersection at 100 kilometers and your brakes don't work very well, that's a good time to start worrying about a car accident, because that's something that you have actually some control over. But in general, there are several types of upper limit problems. There are worry thoughts. One is accidents and illnesses. A lot of us don't realize that we get sick physically in our body when we're not comfortable with the amount of energy flow, love and positive energy that's flowing through us. And so one of the tactics that our unconscious uses, if we don't know how to let that energy flow through us, is to make ourselves ill, to slow ourselves down. And I have another real high-powered person that has worked in the medical field for a long time, was a very successful doctor, but is now transitioning into things like putting hospital mergers together and things that are more in the entrepreneurial zone. But he's still has a bit of fear of public speaking. And so I invited him to go to a public speaking course that now he attends. And I've sent a lot of clients to them, things like Toastmasters and things like that. And as the day of his big speech approached, his first 2-minute speech to Toastmasters, guess what happened that morning? He got a sore throat and started to lose his voice. Fortunately, he was able to put in an emergency call. And I said, look, let's think of that as an upper limit issue. And what fear is that based on? And so he said, oh, yeah, that's that old fear of being fundamentally flawed. Who am I to put a hospital merger together when I finished 198th in my medical school class? That whole fear of there's something fundamentally flawed about me. No matter that he's been a successful neurologist for 30 years, it's just because he's stepping into the new. That brings up a whole new set of fears. And so we have to, if you're really sincere about cultivating your genius, you have to become a student of your upper limit problems. You have to study them, because you're going to have more than one. If you're like me, you're going to have them on and off for years. And so you won't have as much problems with them as I will, because now you've got the book to go by. That's what I didn't want to make the same. I didn't want other people to make all the same slow mistakes that I did. So finally, when I got it right after 30 years, that's when I sat down and wrote the book to speed everybody else's trip. But I think on this planet, Carly, we are called on to do various things. As Maslow told us, we are called on to survive, and then we're called on to go beyond survival to thriving. And one thing, in my opinion, that we will never be happy unless we're doing is expressing our creative genius. And especially, Katie and I say that after midlife, especially in your 40s and 50s and beyond, every breath you take is a choice between creativity and stagnation. Are you breathing for your creativity, or are you just breathing enough to get by? You're breathing for stagnation. And we want people to be just blown away by the discovery of their genius, so that every day they wake up feeling like, wow, I have another opportunity here to do what I'm uniquely suited to do and what I most love to do. See, genius to us, Carly, is not some wild and crazy, bushy-haired person out in the outskirts of town inventing new scientific equipment. I mean, that's a good thing. But what we think is genius is ordinary people doing extraordinary things. And to do things that you love to do and that make other people's lives better too. So our definition of genius is that it's doing what you love to do and are uniquely suited to do, and that which makes a contribution to other people's lives when you do it. If you're doing that, you're living in the sweet spot of success in life.
Oh, I wish everyone could watch you when you were saying that, because you just completely lit up. Your whole body was so energized talking about that zone of genius. And I know that when I'm working in my zone of genius, I feel the same as well. It is literally like a charge through the body, isn't it? It's so energizing. It's
that feeling of, I call it radical aliveness. It's radical from the Latin word radix, which means root or core. So radical aliveness is when you've tapped into the thing that makes you feel most alive, and you've learned how to live in the sweet spot of that. I was watching some surfers the other day on YouTube surfing these huge 30-foot waves, which I'm not a surfer, but they look really scary. But when surfer friends of mine say that when you're in the sweet spot of the wave, it's almost like you don't have to do anything. The wave is doing it for you. And I think when you get lined up with your genius, when you get your genius flowing in you, that takes over and it becomes effortless. And when I was in my 30s, I went out of my way to create a job I would never want to retire from. And even though I haven't had to work for money for 30 years or so, I get up in the morning I feel that radical aliveness every day of my life. If I don't feel it, I look around and say, what's going on here? Because that's a barometer for me to feel that sense of exhilaration that comes from living my genius every day.
It's so true. And I think when I definitely feel like I'm in my zone of genius now. Like I feel it feels effortless and it just feels amazing. But I remember a couple of times actually, where I felt like I was desperately seeking it. And I was thinking, I know I want to find that feeling. I know what I'm trying to find, and I just can't find it. And I actually see that quite a lot with women in my community. They're desperately trying to find that and they just can't find it. How do you find your zone of genius?
Yes. Well, there are a couple of ways to go about it, kind of shortcuts to it. The first shortcut is to ask yourself, what do I most love to do? And oftentimes it's something that relates to what you really loved to do when you were a kid. Like, do you remember the things you really loved to play with when you were a kid, Carly?
I don't know why it just came to my head. It's like Polly Pocket. I used to love playing with Polly Pocket. I don't know if that relates with my life now.
I don't know what Polly Pocket is.
It's like these tiny little girls that you create this world for them.
Wow. Well, see, look what you're doing now. You're creating a new world for a couple of million women out there.
Oh my God, I'm living Polly Pocket in real life.
You're living Polly Universe now. You're out of the pocket. You're way out of the pocket. Well, anyway, see, listen to this. When I was 5 years old, I really wanted this tricycle for my birthday. And I had my heart set on it. And they got me this tricycle. My grandmother and my granddad and my mom, they literally put it together, assembled it. Okay, so they had a lot of love in this tricycle. And it was pouring rain in Florida the day of my birthday. And so I was heartbroken that I couldn't ride my new trike outside. My grandmother, in a special act, told me I could ride it indoors in her living room. She had this huge living room. That was unheard of, and so I felt special. And so I was riding it around her living room all day. And by the end of the day, I figured out this game where I got my granddad to put a cardboard box in the corner of my grandmother's living room. And my mother commuted to work. That was she would always be leaving and driving out the driveway to work. So I commuted to work on my tricycle in my cardboard box. I would commute, park the trike, get into my box, and I would sit there. And the game was people came and talked to me about their problems. And nobody ever did that, of course. This was all purely imaginary. And I tried to get my family to do it. And I told them, they made jokes about this for years, so I'm pretty sure of what happened. But I told them, I don't handle medical problems. I handle other kinds of problems. So if you got a medical problem, you take that to a regular doctor. I said, that was always what they were teasing me about, And have you become a regular doctor yet? They would ask me when I was 15 years old. And but what I meant by that, I couldn't explain it because there was no psychiatrist or psychologist or social worker or counselor or anything like that. This was a little town of 10,000 people, Leesburg, Florida. And there were lots of ministers in town, but I'd never seen one counsel a person or anything like that. So somewhere buried in my psyche was this urge to help people with their problems. So as soon as I heard about the field of counseling psychology and clinical psychology, that's all I wanted to do with my life once I discovered that, because that seemed to me the greatest gift of all is the gift of being able to kind of fine tune yourself as you're helping other people. Mm-hmm. And so, like I say, I haven't had a dull moment since I was in my 30s when I decided I would create this job I wouldn't ever want to retire from.
That's so crazy that you were doing that even as a kid and already asking to help people with their problems.
Yeah, and I bet everybody has something like that in their life that they really love to do. Like I mentor a guy who's a famous professional poker player, and I don't know anything about poker. I don't care to learn anything about poker, but it's all about mindset. Mm-hmm. It's because there are about maybe 100 people, and they all play great cards. It's just on any given day, something is going on with them that allows, like my client recently won $125,000, I think it was, in a poker tournament. And the other guy was considered to be a better poker player, but my guy had it going on attitude-wise that day. There was some vibe he was giving off. And so that to me is, I like to see that, because it doesn't matter whether you're a poker player or a head of a company. I used to coach the Michael Dell and the Dell team back in the 90s down in Austin, Texas. And these guys were the most amazingly brilliant people. I mean, a guy like Michael Dell comes along every couple of 100 years, I think, because of one factor that I noticed that everybody on this call can learn from. And that is the speed from idea to implementation. Because Michael, I would bring some piece of feedback to him, and it wouldn't take him 1/10 of a second to evaluate whether that was useful to him or not and could be useful to other people. He would just take an idea, chomp, digest it, and put it to work right away if he felt like it was in alignment with his ideas. And so that, to me, is a metric that everybody needs to know about and live by. How quickly do you osmose feedback and put it into a form that you can use to make your life and the lives of other people's better? The reason I love to work with entrepreneurs so much is that, we have in our hearts and in our hands and in our heads the power to make people's lives radically better, mm-hmm. at the root, at the core, better. To me, it's the ultimate profession. You cannot ask for a better life. And even if you're not making much money yet doing it, just the fact that you're maintaining that spark of creativity and aliveness says wonders for you about a human being. Because as a human being, one of the things that makes us fully human is our maintaining the spark of creativity and teaching that to other people and having that flourish. I want to live in a world where everybody is doing their genius.
Oh, imagine if everyone was just lit up like that and everyone just had no time to judge others because they were so consumed on the work that they were doing themselves. That would be an incredible place to live.
Yeah. And it doesn't matter where you start. You know, there was a time back in my 20s when I was heavily overweight, sitting in my backyard trying to think of, does life have any meaning at all? Is there any purpose for me being here? You know, so that was an entirely different person. But just like you, I got here through a succession of small choices. And these small choices are all based on, can I fulfill myself here? Can I bring forth the spark of the thing that's sacred to me inside? And if not, I don't even want to be here. And so I think that we need to uncover that spark in ourselves and nurture it in other people for us to feel fully, radically alive.
So true. So what I see so much, and what really is like my biggest passion and drive, is helping women especially realize that they are made for more, hence the title of the podcast, and just take that step, like just take those bold moves towards where they want to go. So what advice would you have for the people that have been sitting on that fence for a while? Like they're just sitting under that upper limit and are just scared to open up into that new realm. What advice have you got for those women? That, for me, I'm just like, just do it and jump and see what happens. But you've probably got a more scientific thing than that.
Well, I'll tell you one of the things we do here. It takes 10 minutes, and I would love everybody to do this. We start people here when, like, corporations might send an executive to us for a day-long intensive or a 2-day intensive where that's the only person we're working with. And it doesn't matter if they're already running one of the biggest corporations in the world. Everybody starts the same place. We invite them to go in a room for 10 minutes and simply do 2 things. Number 1 is to ask themselves in a reflective, wondering tone of voice the following question. It goes like this. What do I most love to do? And then we ask them to take 3 gentle, easy breaths after it, and then ask the question again. So, what do I most love to do? And then 3 easy breaths while you're kind of listening. You're not crowding in with more thoughts. You're just, and listening. And then asking the question again. And I'll tell you what, even though, you know, like the 1-day intensive costs $25,000, the corporation, that's what they pay to have their executive sent. Some people come out at 10 minutes after 9, after they've been doing that for 10 minutes, and they say, that changed my life. That's it. You can have the rest of your money. You know, they stay for the rest of the day, but they say, I got my money's worth in the last 10 minutes. That's a beautiful thing because, see, a lot of people are not in the habit of listening to themselves deeply. And that's what's required in order to really open up your genius, is to open up and begin to lovingly accept and trust yourself to provide your own deepest answers. And that's something that's it doesn't matter if you grew up in the outback of Pakistan or the, outback of Beverly Hills. Most of us as children are educated in a way that there's a lot of putting stuff in and not a lot of, what do you think about it? Not a lot of opportunity for reflection. And so we don't get accustomed to deep reflection. And so we start out with this process of asking, what do you most love to do? Because see, if you can identify that, that's such a core thing that once you get that figured out, see, for me, I love to do what I'm doing right now. I love this. I love lots of other things in life. I've got lots of other things I can do with my time at age 77, but I do this a whole bunch of times a week, talk to people about this subject, because to me, there's no better thing that I can do in the world of work. I do this for free all day long. And so that's another sign that you're in your genius, by the way. You do it for free if you had some other way of paying your bills. And so to me, living in the sweet spot of these questions like, what do I love to do? And here's another one. What do I love to do that makes the biggest contribution to other people. So if your person is sitting there on the fence, write down these questions. Just start asking yourself. You don't even have to get out of the couch. You can sit there, turn the volume down for a minute on Days of Our Lives and just take that moment into yourself and ask yourself, what do I love to do? And so I should translate. I should say EastEnders over there, not
EastEnders.
So to me, it's all about opening up to life in a wonder-filled way, in a wonderful way. Is your approach to life like, what can I learn? What can I learn? That's wonder-filled. I see one of your critters likes this conversation.
Oh, it's my dog, Rodney. He literally hears any sound. He's going wild. Maybe he's just had a breakthrough. Maybe he's not afraid to shy away anymore. He wants his voice heard.
That's right. Good. And well, blessings to him. I have 2 British short-haired cats, by the way, that like to make an appearance sometime, but they're in their what we call the big nap phase of the day, which
nice.
Goes from about 11 o'clock here till about 3 or 4 in the afternoon. So they're zonked out.
Cute. The Big Nap would be a very different kind of book than The Big Leap.
Not a bad idea, though.
Yeah, I know. I think there's something
for
in
our
it.
elder citizens.
I know. I think so. But I love that reminder that we have all the answers within us. Like, it's already there. It's just about silencing the noise, tuning into yourself, and then just trusting and leaning into what it is that you hear. It's just trusting yourself, isn't it? It's such a big part of it.
Yes. And I want to just quibble the word just, like just trusting us, because trusting ourselves is a very big leap. Here's an extreme example, Carly. When we worked with the couple, when they would decide where they wanted to go out to eat, they always liked to go eat, I think it was on Saturday night, if I remember correctly, with the couple and the 3 kids. It would always go like this. She would always say first to her husband, "Where would you like to eat?" And he would name off a place, and then she would sell that to the kids. Okay, that was the pattern. And so I said, just once in here as an experiment, it was getting on toward lunchtime. I said, "What would you like to eat?" And she immediately looked over at her husband. Without even going inside, she went over to look over there and see what he wanted to eat. And I said, I went over and I stood between them, actually. And I said, go back inside right now and ask yourself, what do you want to eat for lunch? Boy, I'll tell you, it took about a couple of minutes of working with her just to get her to the point where she said, "Oh, you know what I'd really love is I'd like some spinach lasagna." And her husband sort of went, he didn't like that sort of thing. He didn't like gooey food. And so anyway, we worked out a deal. I'll tell you how the family got pictured in the deal. Here was their typical way of figuring out where to go on Saturday night. Somebody would suggest something they liked, and then everybody else would say, "No, I don't like that." And so their only way they could finally do it was to figure out a restaurant that nobody wanted to go to. And they would go to that restaurant. So anyway, we had helped them lovingly break up that pattern, first of having her get into the picture and say, "I'm going to trust myself. What I want to eat is just as important as everybody else." But, a lot of us are programmed early on to defer to other people. And, it's a beautiful, wonderful type of personality, but it can be limiting eventually if you've been used to deferring to others. And so what I want is for everybody to light that candle and keep it lit in themselves by asking themselves, what do I love to do? How can I offer that as a gift to the world to help other people? So that's the big experiment that my life has been on for the past 40 or 50 years, and I highly recommend it. I want to be like George Bernard Shaw, the great playwright, one of my literary heroes. I was an English major, by the way, long ago, and George Bernard Shaw, I think he lived to maybe 104 years old or something. He said, I want to be completely used up when I die. I want to use my creativity so thoroughly that when it's used up, I just, I think that's a good lifestyle recommendation for us as human beings.
Oh, definitely. To feel like you've just got nothing left to give and you're all used up. I love that. Gay, I could literally speak to you for hours. I feel like I'm just sitting here and I'm just smiling because I think, every word you're saying is having such a big impact. But I have some quick fire questions that I ask all of my guests at the end of the podcast. I'd love to ask them to you. I would love you to finish this sentence. So success is?
Success is having everything you want while enjoying everything you have and sharing all your gifts with your community.
Love it. Happiness is?
Happiness is feeling the flow of loving connection in your whole body.
Oh, I love that. What is a book or a podcast that changed your life? If I was asked this, I would say The Big Leap.
See if you can find a little book called The Lazy Man's Guide to Enlightenment. Oh. It's hard to find. It came out way back in the 60s. It's a little tiny book, but if you can find it, it's a wonderful little book about how to start living your life by loving yourself rather than censoring yourself. That was what I learned from that book. It's got a lot of stuff in it. Another one, may I throw in another one?
Of course.
I loved J. Krishnamurti's book called Freedom from the Known. It's all about how to get out from under the stuff that you know and the stuff that you don't know that's holding you back, and to get into a freedom of thought place. And it's a beautiful book.
Oh, they sound amazing. Thank you for sharing them. And then lastly, what is the best piece of advice you've ever been given?
The best piece of advice I've ever been given is breathe, love, and move. Breathe, love, and move. Keep the flow going all the time. Love as much as you can from wherever you are.
I love that. Thank you so much. I feel like I've got even more from speaking from you than I did from your book. And I'm so, so grateful that I've had this time to chat to you today. I really appreciate it.
Well, thank you very much. It's been a pleasure being here. I wish everybody on earth spoke with your accent. Your accent is so, as an old English major, it's like I'm hearing the essence of the British accent coming through. I love it.
Well, I don't think many British people are saying that about my accent, to be honest. I don't think they are listening to me and saying she is the essence of British accent. I think they're probably thinking she's a bit rough. But well, I appreciate it.
I'm a Californian. My standards may be a little looser.
No, I appreciate it. I appreciate being an English rose for this short time. Where can everyone find all things you and your work?
Yes, probably the best place is hendricks.com, HENDRICKS.com. We also have a big presence where we talk about our e-courses called heartsinharmony.com. That's a good place to get to know the relationship side of our work, heartsinharmony.com. And we're all over the place. You can find The Big Leap and its successor, the new Genius Zone book. That's all over the place. So those are a couple of good places to start also.
Amazing. Thank you so much. I know everyone's got so much from this. I have as well. And I just really appreciate everything that you do.
Thank you. Blessings to you. Thank you for living in your genius zone.
Ah, thank you.